Hello and welcome to episode number 108 of Week in Review. I am your recovering from sickness host, Sean, and on this week's show, we're going to talk about The Gentleman, talk about Bis Sim's new DLC. We'll look forward to some new releases, and I'll tell you about streams happening over on twitch.tv/SeanOsaurusRex. Obviously, this episode's been a little bit delayed by a week exactly. I got sick on February 7th, and it got pretty bad, and I thought, I'll just delay it a couple of days. It'll be totally fine. I got a little bit better, only for everything to just fall apart. I got a very sore throat. And had to deal with that over the weekend, so I ended up just pushing this all the way back a week to today, the 18th of February. So if you've been wondering where Week in Review is, or why I haven't been streaming, or why the video uploads have been way more sporadic than they had been over the past several months, that's why. I've been very sick for a week and a half, and it's very frustrating. So first up on this week's show is The Gentleman, or more about what do I remember about The Gentleman, which was a movie that I saw like 2 weeks ago at this point, and how much of it did I retain through a pretty substantial sickness. Fortunately, I think most of the relevant information. I was really excited for The Gentleman. I like Guy Ritchie's stuff. I like Snatch, Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. Revolver's weird. I don't think it works as well as he wants it to, but it's a thing that exists. I like Rock and Roller. I even love Aladdin, even though it got completely destroyed because I went and saw Booksmart the same night. I liked Aladdin. It was a good movie. I liked what it added to it. Anyway, you can find a review for Aladdin last year around the time it came out. So I was excited to see what Guy Ritchie would bring to the gangster comedy caper thing. I don't really know exactly what you would call it. And unfortunately, it doesn't bring a lot. I thought it was kind of dull and boring. It was a movie that definitely did not click with me, which was surprising because of all of the movies that he's made that I actually have liked. And the way people were talking about it online, a lot of the people that I follow seemed like they really enjoyed it. And I walked out of it just being like, that was a hot cup of meh. I found the first third of this movie to be really kind of dull, actually. It's a lot of conversations that I found to be very boring and tedious and just wordly uninteresting, kind of just garbage. I don't think they ever really led to anything interesting. They weren't funny or engaging. They were just things to set stuff up. And good God, this movie has so many pieces and so much shit to set up, and it just takes so long that I eventually just kind of lost interest. While it's setting all this stuff up, I think it gets too bloated, and I don't think it touches back on the initial plot idea enough to keep that in my brain, so that as this keeps going, I sit there and I'm like, wait, what the hell does any of this have to do with anything? Like, I know in the back of my head, I know that at some point all of this stuff is going to connect. All of it's going to make sense and work. I just thought that it took way too long to get there. And I didn't think that some of the stuff that was even set up was all that great. And even looking back on it, I think I have a problem with the fundamental structure of this movie. There are certain elements that are set up early that only exist to put that idea in your head. Like the idea of a viral video is only put in your head so that it can be used later down the line. But you can't really take that out because of the way the movie is constructed. It is constructed to have that piece of information in there, and if you pull it out, then things start to fall apart. It was kind of the same problem that I had with Knives Out, where I love the first third and the third third of Knives Out, but I found the second, like the middle chunk of that movie, to be a real slog. The issue I have with it is just the way that it's constructed. I don't like that was the route that they took. And that's how I feel about this particular movie. It's not that you can remove these parts and just put something else in. You have to figure out how that changes equations and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where it's just like, oh boy, like, I don't like how this is set up. I don't like how it pays off. I don't like these aspects and how they work together, but it's a structural issue for me. The biggest problem though with all this setup is by the time things kind of start to fall into place and by the time things pick up and I'm supposed to care, I don't. There is a very specific moment where I stopped caring in this movie, and it's when Matthew McConaughey walks into a restaurant to talk to some guy about something. Yet again, we have to sit through another conversation, and I sat there in my seat just thinking to myself, like, we're doing this again? We're having another conversation? wait, what is the thread of this movie? Like, what is the point? I have completely lost the plot. Who's this guy? What does he have to do with anything? Like, nothing has paid off up until this point, and now you're going to introduce yet another element to it that, again, doesn't really pay off anything. And this particular sequence pays off the least consequential, most useless part of the movie, and it's so frustrating, and it ends in a sequence that I didn't find funny and was just like this was the point where I was like, I'm over this and I don't think I'm going to like the rest of it. Fortunately, though, there are some actual bright spots to this movie. I really like Hugh Grant's character, and I like Colin Farrell as well. I had to double check that name about 6 times to make sure I didn't pick the wrong guy. They both bring what I want in these movies, which is energy and humor and kind of a more over the top character. It seems like a lot of the characters in this movie are played pretty straight, especially the 2 leads, which I think are slightly miscast in Matthew McConaughey, who just feels very monotone and mellow throughout the whole thing when I feel like he should be more exuberant. And Charlie Hunnam, who I don't necessarily have a problem with, I just don't think he gets enough to do. And again, he gets stuck in that monotone kind of boring role of like, he's a guy and he's the wordsmith, which leads to a cool sequence where he gets to be the talker among the potentially chaotic that I really liked, but it's another thing that doesn't mean anything. It's another stupid setup to a consequence that doesn't pan out. And it's frustrating because what I like so much and what I think about when I think about the other movies that he makes is these over the top berserk kind of crazy characters and moments, and this movie just doesn't really have it. And even when it tries, it feels very forced and it doesn't work. Some of the kind of over the top gross out humor they try to go for doesn't really work. It's just off-putting and bizarre. There are another couple of pieces of information that are just kind of tasteless and thrown in there that almost feels like a shock value sort of thing. And it's missing that element that I wanted so badly. And what makes Colin Farrell and what makes Hugh Grant really shine is that they nail what's given to them, especially Hugh Grant, who just gets to chew scenery for minutes at a time as he sets up this story, and he's the one narrating it and telling you this story. And he has such a clear picture of how he wants it done, all the way down to the aspect ratio of 2.35 by 1. And it's this really just weird way that he's thinking about it, and he's just kind of, it feels like he's just super pompous and full of himself. I've nailed it. I have it. I have this exact thing that I want. But it just, I don't know. It gets slogged too much in the front. It does pick up a lot more in the back end when Colin Farrell's character does become a little bit more of a focal point and gives him more to do. But like I said, it's just one of those things that it's too little too late, and I walked out just going it doesn't work for me in the way that I thought it would or that I even wanted it to. This movie is also sorely lacking in Henry Golding's character, who is incredibly important to the plot, but he seems to get pushed off willy-nilly. Comes in, he'll come in, have a big moment, important thing that happens. Okay, you can go away. Oh wait, but hang on, come back in. We need you to do this really important thing. Go away. And comes back in, and I never felt like I got to know him enough to really understand his motivations or why he would care or why he would do the things that he does. And I don't know. It's a bummer because I think that he had the next opportunity to be that kind of over the top kind of crazy character, because that's kind of how he's introduced. He's introduced as a millennial firecracker or whatever. But even beyond that, I just like Henry Golding, and it just felt like a missed opportunity to have him be a focal point of the trailers, and then not really do a whole lot of interesting stuff in the movie. I don't know. This movie kind of just wore me down and never really fully brought it back. It also does the thing where it makes a lot of reveals very late in the movie, very quickly, and I did not buy all of them. There were several, in fact, that I sat there and going I don't believe this. That's cheap. This feels like you're just kind of pulling it out of the well to make it work. That was a very minor detail, I guess, sure, whatever, but it it doesn't work in the way that some of his other stuff does, and that's a bummer. I mean, overall, The Gentleman's not bad. It's not good. I just think it's incredibly meh and super forgettable. There's a couple of bright spots here and there, but it takes way too long to set up, and by the time I'm supposed to care, I don't, and I kind of lost the thread of what I was even supposed to be, like, keeping, like, comprehending in my head, because there's just so many monotonous, dull conversations at the beginning. It's definitely a misfire, and I'm really surprised with the positive reception to it, because it just doesn't feel like it's anything special. Next up on the show, we have the Bus Sim DLC. That's right, Bus Sim is back. I have talked about this game a lot on this show. The regular review, Q3 in review, year in review. I've streamed like 8 parts of it over on Twitch. I really love Bus Simulator. I have not played the game since October. I mainly walked away from the game because I didn't like the mission I was on. The mission I have to do right now is I need to run 2 specific routes, and I need to make sure that I get 4 stars on each of them. The issue with this is that the routes aren't particularly stop heavy. So if you hit potholes, or if you don't pull up correctly, you can lose points on your stars, and it can be a little bit difficult to recover, especially some of the roads that you have to drive are a little more pothole laden than some of the others in some of the other roads in the game. So it's one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, these routes are really long. They're about 30 minutes apiece. They only have 7 stops, so I need to be really perfect. As soon as I put that into my head, I start to get really nervous, and I make mistakes that I don't normally make, because I just want to get it done and move on. So I have walked away from the game. On top of that, I have talked about multiple times on this show that the game doesn't run particularly well. The menus don't run very smoothly. They're not very responsive. The in-game stuff is rough at times. It can run stably, but if you get one of the national holiday events, there is a very, very high likelihood that the game will crash during that particular sequence. I would say it's probably in the range of like 80% chance that it's going to crash. That's not good. When I stream it, it usually crashes once, sometimes twice, depending on the length of the stream. The game it felt like it needed a little bit more TLC before it got put out into the world. It was right there, but they didn't quite execute it the way that it feels like a game that should be on console. But even with all the technical problems, I really fought through it. I tried to love this game as much as possible. I put it on one of my favorite games of the year. I love it a lot. I love what it offers. It's just a bummer that it feels kind of like 75% baked. Now, the reason I'm talking about it on this particular episode is because they released a brand new bus DLC pack, and it contains 3 buses, 3 separate lengths. They have like a small, slightly bigger, and then a double length bus. And the new buses that they added are great. They all have very good acceleration. Especially on the 2 smaller buses, they accelerate way more than I was anticipating. Like, it took a little bit to kind of get used to. I thought they were very responsive, maybe a little bit too responsive, because the first route that I took around, I hit 2 people, which is not great, but we made it through. So the 2 like smaller buses handle very well. Really great acceleration, really great braking. The accordion bus, double length bus, however you would prefer to phrase it, I like accordion. It accelerates very well and it handles really well. However, the brakes don't seem to be as good, which makes sense because it's about double the length of the regular buses. And also, I was going downhill at like full speed and accidentally went right into the back of a car. So while it sounds like my playthrough didn't go very well, I really like the 3 new buses that were added, and I plan on using them more frequently as I continue to play the game. And having 3 new buses is a great way to get me back into a game that, while I love, I did actually fall off of it. Conveniently, though, they put a patch out at some point. I'm not exactly sure. I'm assuming that it was within the range of the brand new buses, but it could have been any time between October and late January. I'm not 100% sure. I'm just assuming that it was in conjunction with the brand new DLC pack. And the new patch was 3.4 gigabytes, and it is absolutely tremendous. It is the exact thing that this game needed to push it to that next level. It's almost everything I've been talking about with this game over the past several months. All of the kind of technical limitations or deficiencies have seemingly all been corrected. As luck would have it, that first route that I talked about that I ran two people over on accident, it happened to be a national holiday route, and as soon as I loaded it up, I went, uh-oh, we might not make it through it. The game might crash, and it ran beautifully. It did what it needed to do to not crash the game, and this patch, like even from when you first load into the game and you're looking at the map, and I have about 35 routes, which seems to be the problem that people have pointed out, is like when you have the more routes you have, the harder the game has to work to keep up all that information. So that's why, like, when you're moving the cursor around on the map in the general menus, it's really laggy and really slow. This ran perfectly fine, and I say perfectly fine with a huge graded curve. It's not the smoothest experience in the world, but it is significantly, noticeably better than it used to be. And the in-game stuff feels a lot better, more responsive, and it didn't crash. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the developers. Like, great job on the patch. It really helped the game on the Xbox One. I specifically was playing on the Xbox One S. Made the whole thing run a lot better. Didn't crash during the national holiday event. The menus were looking good. It felt even more responsive in the games. I didn't give out any wrong change or anything. And being able to play the game for as long as I did and basically have all the mistakes be like, yeah, I turned too much, or I was going too fast, I didn't have enough brake. That's all on me. The controller did disconnect. That's not obviously the developer's fault. Controller disconnected and like ran me into a wall, but that's fine. Not that big of a deal. It was actually a fairly eventful stream, but Bus Simulator is as good as it's ever been. Hopefully it just kind of keeps improving, but the way it was running was highly encouraging. And if you haven't tried it out, Bus Simulator yet, and you're interested in it, this is a great time to get in it. The new DLC buses are great. I really like them. I'm going to use them more consistently. They have tremendous acceleration, great braking, except for the double accordion bus. That one doesn't have the greatest braking. Of course, if I slowed down, that might help things as well. But Bus Sim got a massive update that has made that game a lot better than it already was. I already loved what it was offering, and I love it even more. And that makes me want to go back and try and finally beat that mission. Because this episode has been so delayed, we have 2 weeks of new releases to cover. So we'll start with the week of February 11th. There were no games, a lot of small stuff, nothing really stuck out. 1 Blu-ray in fabric, and 4 movies. Sonic the Hedgehog, The Photograph, Downhill, and then Portrait of a Lady on Fire opened in limited release. As for the week of February 18th, it's actually a lot more exciting. On Blu-ray, Jojo Rabbit, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Kimmy Schmidt, the complete box set series, and 21 Bridges all hit. Emma will be in theaters this week in limited release, and there are even a couple of noteworthy games out this week. Thief Simulator hits on the Xbox One, Police Autobahn Simulator 2 hits on the PlayStation 4, Vanquish and Bayonetta 10th Anniversary Bundle Combo Pack, whatever absurd title they put with that, that hits on both Xbox One and PlayStation 4 this week. There's a rumor going around that the Kingdom Hearts games may be releasing on Xbox One. At the time of recording, I hadn't seen anything that really confirmed that. It seemed like it was just floating around, like it almost accidentally got released. I don't know. The information was flying very fast and loose, so not 100% sure. So that might be out. So if that is your cup of tea or you're interested in it, which I know I am personally, keep an eye out for that. There's also Bunny Parking and Draugen. I'm not exactly sure. It's Draugen. It's a noir mystery about a guy trying to find his sister in 1920s Norway. It sounds really cool. I'm interested in checking it out. I read the description and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Then I watched the trailer and I was like, that looks like a Sean-ass game. I should check that out. And conveniently, I hope to check that out. That is going to be the planned stream on Friday. Saturday, I'm going to check out Maximum Football 2019. I may finally get around to checking out Coffee Talk as well. It's just going to depend on how my throat is doing, because that's going to involve a lot of talking. I don't necessarily have to talk through Maximum Football 2019 all that much, hopefully. I don't know if there's commentary in that game. I haven't looked at it really at all. And then Monday we'll finally pick back up on Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Again, sorry that the streams have been all off and the video uploads have been all off. I'm just trying to get over this cold, get healthy, feeling better. I'm definitely feeling a lot better than I was several days ago, so that's good. But streams will resume Friday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex, so be sure to go and check those out. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Week in Review. If you like the content, you can scroll on down and hit subscribe. Then you can click that little bell and you'll get notified when I post videos, because Lord knows you need more of my face in your life. After you do that, you can scroll on down just a little bit and you can leave me a comment below. You can tell me what you think of the new Bus Sim update and the new Bus Sim DLC. You can let me know what you thought of the gentleman, if there's anything you're looking forward to, if there's anything you think I'm missing that I should be excited about. Let me know down there. Head on over to twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex to catch live streams on Friday, Saturday, and Monday. Head on over to challenge.com/MarchMascotMadness2, link in the description, and you can fill out your bracket for March Mascot Madness, which tips off on March 1st over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex. And be sure to check back right here, unless I'm sick, every Tuesday for more Week in Review. We'll see you next week, unless I get sick again. God, I don't want to get sick again. Bye.